you feel it, that quiet knock in the back of your mind. Someone who disappeared into years of silence is suddenly back. Right now, you are standing at a crossroads you never expected to face again. Something is pulling at you. And psychology has something very specific and then very surprising to say about why this is happening. You are not imagining things. You are not being naive. And you are not overreacting. What you are feeling right now, that strange mixture of hope and fear, of wanting to believe and being afraid to, is one of the most psychologically complex emotional states a human being can experience. This isn't coincidence. This isn't just nostalgia knocking at your door. Psychology shows us that when someone returns after years of silence, it is almost never random. There is something happening beneath the surface, something rooted in the deepest mechanics of human attachment. And you deserve to understand exactly what that is. Because when you truly understand the reason, everything shifts, everything looks different, and you, in this moment, will finally see what this return is actually about. Here is what psychology has uncovered, and when you hear it, it will change the way you see everything that is happening right now. Most people assume that someone returns because they finally missed you enough, because time taught them what they lost, because they grew up, woke up, or came to their senses. And while some of that may be woven into their story, it is not the core reason. The core reason, the one that psychology points to clearly and consistently, is something far more involuntary, far more primal, and far more revealing about the depth of what you once meant to them. The human brain is wired for attachment, not as a preference, not as a romantic ideal, as a survival mechanism. From your earliest breath, your nervous system is designed to form bonds, and more critically, to register when those bonds are broken. When someone loses you, truly loses you, not just physically but emotionally, they do not simply reset. The nervous system does not work that way. It cannot erase the emotional architecture that was built around you. It cannot delete the patterns, the comfort, the reflexes, the way their heart felt safe when you were near. Instead, it keeps all of that alive, stored, unresolved. Psychologists call this an open emotional loop. And it is one of the most quietly powerful forces in all of human psychology. When a deeply meaningful connection ends before the grief has been processed, before the loss has been fully accepted, the mind keeps returning to it. Not because returning is rational, not because it makes logical sense after years of silence, but because the nervous system is still trying to close something it never got to finish. Right now, in this moment, that is what is happening inside this person. They are not coming back because they have completely transformed. They are coming back because they have been haunted, and you are the haunting. Let that land for a moment. The years of silence were not years of forgetting. That is what psychology wants you to understand. Silence is not the same as moving on. Inside that silence, there was often a quiet, ongoing negotiation between the part of them that wanted to reach out and the part that held back, between pride and longing, between the fear of rejection and the pull of something unfinished. You never saw that negotiation. You only saw the silence. And it is easy to interpret silence as indifference. But psychology shows us that the loudest silences are often the ones covering the most noise. Their silence was never empty. It was full of you. Think about what it means to carry someone for years without reaching out, to hear a certain song and feel them, to pass through a familiar place and notice their absence the way you notice missing light, to resist for months, maybe for years, the urge to simply say, "I still think about you." That is not indifference. That is not forgetting. That is someone wrestling with an emotion they cannot fully name. And now they have stopped wrestling. Now they are here, which means the loop became too loud to ignore, which means you were never forgotten. You, without trying, without performing, without doing anything other than being authentically who you are, created an imprint so deep in another person's emotional world that years of silence could not dissolve it. That is not something small. That is not something that happens with everyone they have ever known. Emotional imprints that survive years, that bypass logic and ego and pride, are formed only around connections that were genuinely meaningful. You cannot fake your way into someone's nervous system at that level. You cannot manufacture your way into their unresolved grief. What you gave them was real. What they felt with you was real, and that is exactly why they are here. Psychology shows us that when the nervous system holds an open loop long enough, it eventually generates what researchers describe as an intrusive pull, an involuntary movement back toward the unresolved connection. The person may resist it. They may reason with themselves. They may try to outrun it. But the loop stays open until it is addressed. And addressing it means returning to the source, returning to you. Now, here is the piece that will surprise you most. This return is not just about what they lost. It is a signal. Not necessarily a signal to rush back or to reopen every door at once, but a signal that what existed between you carried a weight that time could not dissolve. There is a difference between something that is broken and something that is simply unfinished. Broken things stay broken, but unfinished things, connections with genuine depth, with real emotional truth, have a strange way of finding their way back to the moment where they were supposed to continue. Right now, you are inside that moment, and what you do with it belongs entirely to you, not to them, not to the years of silence, not to the version of you who was still figuring things out back then, to you, right now, in this current chapter of your life. With everything you have learned, with everything you have survived, with the version of yourself standing here, stronger and more self-aware than ever before. What you are feeling, that blend of wonder and caution, of recognition and uncertainty, is not confusion, it is wisdom. It is your heart recognizing something familiar while your mind is still catching up. Both of those responses are valid. Both deserve space. Because ultimately, this moment is not just about whether to give them another chance. It is about something far more important. It is about recognizing the kind of presence you carry in this world. About understanding that you are the kind of person who leaves a mark. Not through games, not through performance, but through genuine connection, through showing up with your whole heart, through being someone whose absence is felt for years across the silence. That is who you are. That has always been who you are. And now, let this be the moment you truly hear this. You deserve a love that does not need years of silence to understand your value. You deserve someone who sees what they have while they still have it. Not someone who only recognizes it through absence and loss. Your worth has never been determined by whether someone stayed or whether they left. Your value exists completely independent of their choices. It always has. You were never the problem. You were never too much. You were never asking for too much by wanting someone to show up fully, to stay, to choose you. Not just once, but every day. Loving deeply was never your mistake. It was your greatest strength. And if any moment of silence ever made you wonder whether you were enough, let this be the end of that doubt. The fact that they are back, after everything, after all this time, is the only proof you need. You were always enough. You were more than enough. You were unforgettable. You were the open loop they could never close. If this touched something real in you, if somewhere in these words you felt seen, hit that like button and become part of the Psychology Wisdom family. Subscribe so the next insight finds you before you even knew you were searching for it. Your heart is still writing its story, and the most meaningful chapters, the ones filled with the love you truly deserve, are still ahead.